Arguably, the best thing about a sequel that does not do very well is that if they do their job right, they can learn from their mistakes and end a trilogy on a good note. In my opinion, that's why a lot of trilogies end up having their weakest installments land on that second film. Not always, but often. So, now that we know that Prince Caspian wasn't the best sequel in the world, can the Chronicles of Narnia learn from their mistakes and redeem the series for the third outing? Obviously, they never finished the franchise, but is that because the third film never learned anything and was just as bad? Or was it because Prince Caspian, people didn't care to invest in seeing the Voyage of the Dawn Treader at all when it came out, and so the box office tanked? Good question. Let's get into it. Lucy and Edmund return to Narnia with their cousin Eustace, where they meet up with Prince Caspian for a trip across the sea aboard the royal ship, the Dawn Treader, attempting to locate the 7 lords of Telmar. Along the way, they encounter dragons, dwarves, merfolk, and a band of lost warriors before heading towards the very edge of the world. Curiously, when you watch this film, you might initially think that it did exactly what Prince Caspian did and essentially just embellished everything with more and more action that wasn't in the book. And while it certainly embellished here and there, it did so much more similarly to the events of the first movie. So everything that happens in this movie, story-wise, happened in the book, almost identically. There's a lot of character development moments in this film for everybody, so slower moments were again slow here. They even added character development moments that did not happen in the book, especially with Lucy's self-loathing ideals of wanting to become more beautiful. This felt so much more in line of a story worth watching than Prince Caspian, and you once again feel that magic and wonder that you felt in the first film, just maybe in a much more darker approach. Action-wise, it makes perfect sense as to what they did in this movie, because the book was indeed filled to the brim with sea monsters and dark magic and beasts aplenty, and what this movie did was essentially turn everything into a swashbuckling adventure not unlike that of Pirates of the Caribbean or the Odyssey. And that blends in really well with the story of trying to find these 7 lords and running into the ends of the earth on a ship, not knowing what you'll run into. The action works here. It's not pointless, as I often felt like it was with Prince Caspian. It wasn't just action to be action. It was worthwhile and exciting and creative and fresh. It easily gave me the same vibes that I felt while reading the book, in which I kept saying to myself, man, this story is underrated and one of my favorite stories in the series thus far. It's also one of the most solid plots out of any of the movies. You know what they're trying to do and what kind of obstacles that they'll run into from the start. This is a clean, exciting narrative. It's not as classic or as iconic as I feel like the first film is, which gave everybody their proper introductions, and this is just a continuation of that, as well as a continuation of Prince Caspian, so it doesn't really stand on its own 2 legs. You unfortunately have to get through Prince Caspian to understand who Prince Caspian is, since he's in this movie too, but in the same breath, he's much better in Dawn Treader. He's much more significant and important here than I feel like he ever was in his own movie. Oddly enough. Overall, I was surprised with the Chronicles of Narnia and the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I think the main reason I forgot a majority of the events of the film was when it came out, which was a really rough patch in my life where I blocked out a lot of things, including whatever movie I saw during that period. I think if it came out a year before or after, I'd more or less remember it better. So let's go ahead and break down my final score for a second. From a technical, unbiased vantage point, this film is made really well. It follows the book very, very closely, and just like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it distinctly only embellishes what it needs to when it needs to. It's not just action for action's sake, but has a lot of fantastic focus on character growth and development. You have added characters here, primarily Eustace, played by Will Poulter, and again, perfect casting as an annoying little brat who comes into his own. I wouldn't cast it any differently. And it makes me a little bit sad to know that they never made The Silver Chair, which was his story. That's where he got to shine. And that's the book that I'm reading right now. Moving right along, it's obviously really important to note that the visuals here are fantastic and miles better than they ever were in the first 2 movies. Aslan has never looked better, though again he was barely in the movie. But past Aslan, there's a lot of different creatures and focuses on lights and colors here, which all around showcases the visuals as well as cinematography and editing incredibly well. The only fallback behind the scenes, I would say, is that the musical score is no longer done by Harry Gregson Williams, but instead David Arnold. Now, Arnold also has an expansive library of scores, including some work done on James Bond films, and the score here is not bad by any means. But, there was always something special about Harry's composition of these movies, so this unbiased score is 92%. How I felt about the film, or my bias score, that agrees completely with my unbiased score, actually, because I had a lot of fun with this movie. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's as instantly iconic or memorable as The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, since that was a wonderful starting off point. But technically speaking, the plot is much better here, as was the technical advantages of improved CGI. And the adventure at hand, it was all fantastic. So you're gonna hate me for this. I know it, but my bias score is also sitting at 92%, meaning that when we combine the two scores together, we end up with a final combined score of 92%, 92 out of 100 possible stars, meaning that I scored this 2% better than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I'm having a hard time believing it myself, but it does make a little bit of sense. Because improved graphics, the very balanced approach of great action versus great character development. The film also opens up really well and didn't take forever to get to the point. The adventure was honestly amazing. It does a great job closing out the story with the initial group of siblings all around. It might have teased another movie with Eustace a little bit, but as a whole, it worked very well as a last movie, so I can't really complain that much. But what about you guys, though? Have you seen this third film in the Narnia series? And if so, what were your thoughts? Especially let me know if you read the book and how you feel that this film compares to it. As for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. Until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the #1.